Welcome to Being at Home with George. I'm very excited to be here. And this idea of saying yes to life, embracing whatever comes up, and at the same time generating the hope that is so important to generate the hope. And so tonight I'd like to talk about this idea that I talk about all the time: reset, reboot, renew. And I talk about it in reference to the cell phone when it gets locked down and it's not working, we just turn it off and turn it back on. So we talk about reset, reboot. We don't talk about renewal that much. And so I want to talk about renewal, not just the body, but also this idea of renewing the mind. This idea, how do we get the mind so to make it fresh, make it new so it can see things in new ways. In the Buddhist tradition, they talk about beginner's mind, specifically the Zen tradition. The idea is to have a beginner's mind so that you're open to everything and closed to nothing. And once again, we get back to our idea of reset, reboot, renew. And at the same time, the renewal helps us to say yes to whatever comes up. So I was thinking about this, and it takes a certain amount of energy to do this. And I read a lot, and one of the books that I really like reading is The Art of the Impossible by Stephen Kotler. And in that book, and I have to slow down a little bit because I'm really excited talking about this, is that he talks about drive comes from curiosity, passion, and purpose. So let's think about that. And believe it or not, renewal has everything to do with what we talk about in the Bible that says, be still and know, the deep listening, to really think. And we've been talking about this in the last several weeks about what's our intention. You know, if we have clear intentions, then we have clear actions. And so we have to really set the tone for how do we renew the mind. We have to change it. We have to be able to make it fresh so it can see things in new and exciting ways. And so this idea of curiosity, being curious about ourselves, really being curious about, to me, I talk about you got to know yourself to be yourself, to express yourself, to share yourself. So we really begin with the self. All groups begin with the self. And so this idea of focusing within, playing the inside game, and realizing that one of the greatest adventures in living is getting to know yourself better or getting to know ourselves better. And so what finding a way to start is how to get our mind at positive so that we're practicing what they call positive genius. How do we make the mind so it's at positive because it works better? It's called the broaden and build theory, but also it feels better. And when the mind is right, everything else is right. So renewing the mind means we have to be able to go in and reset, reboot, renew. But renewing it is changing the way we're seeing things so that we're at positive. So we're able to say yes to whatever comes up. But at the same time, we are in connection with the curiosity because we're very curious. How does this work? Because when we become interested in something, it becomes interesting. So the curiosity is part of that drive or the energy. Now, the passion part of it, to bring this idea of really wanting to experience what they call the richness of our feelings and the sharpness of our perceptions, to really see life as an adventure and to see it from this growth mindset, this idea of what's the lesson? How do you do this? To ask the how to questions, because I think the purpose of life is to live fully and creatively. And Joseph Campbell talked about it in The Power of Myth. He's talking about meaning, but he says, I don't think people are seeking meaning. I think people are seeking the experience of being fully alive. And that's the interesting thing as I can become more authentically myself or let my authentic self express itself. There's an aliveness there. There's a curiosity. There's an excitement there. And we all can have access to that, but it's not something that happens on its own most of the time. It's something we have to train. It's like training the body. We know that. We got to train the mind and we got to train ourselves to take a rest or to have renewal so we can just listen, to be still and know, just listen to our mind, be able to experience our feelings, our thoughts. What thoughts are we entertaining? And what are the thoughts that help renew the mind, the positive thoughts, and having a purpose? And so, if the purpose of living is to live fully and creatively, to be our authentic selves, then if we can have passion about that and we can get curious about that, that could be very powerful. That's how I live. And I think that's an exciting way to live. So I don't know if I want to say much more, but it's really about this idea of renewal. What thoughts, what feelings, what behaviors do we engage in that help us feel fresh, renewed, and to help us stay in touch with this idea that we're on an adventure. And the greatest adventure in living is getting to know ourselves better. So knowing how we need to renew our minds, knowing how we need to reset, reboot, renew so that we can see things in fresh and new ways.